In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there.
People of Springfield, please don't eat my cats. Why would you do that? Eat something else. People of Springfield, please don't eat my dog. Here's a catalog of other things to eat.
They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs. They're eating the cats. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. They're eating the dogs.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
They're eating the cats.
Meow, 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 meow.
They're eating the pets of the people that live there. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country.
We will continue to support Ukraine becoming a NATO member.
Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches in black masses. Evil minds that blood destruction, sorcerer of death's destruction. Oh, TRUDEAU!
We will stand up every day and every way in favor of the export that the Ukrainian government has asked for.
Today I'm announcing more military assistance.
No more war pigs have the power. And of God has struck the hour. Day of judgment, God is calling. On the knees, the war pigs crawling, begging mercy for their sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh, TRUDEAU! Only again.
Our role right from the outset of the Ukraine war should have been that of a peacemaker.
We want you to be the super spreaders of truth.
Super Sunday. Let's spread it, everyone. I thought I'd do a little news stream and another little watch party today. We're going to watch the film we made with Matthew Arrett for CanadianPatriot.org called Who is Our Real Enemy? But first, I think we should celebrate the beginning of World War III, as Glorious Leader has announced that, that we're just going to go ahead and fire missiles into Russia. I mean, why not, right? This is what it must have felt like in Europe in the run-up to World War I. Like we're in Kosovo.
And that's why Canada
and
others are unequivocal.
Oh, volume.
Ukraine must win this war against Russia. and we will continue to be there to support Ukraine. And yes, Canada fully supports Ukraine using long-range weaponry to prevent and interdict Russia's continued ability to degrade Ukrainian civilian infrastructure and mostly to kill innocent civilians in their unjust war.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
Russia's
that's why
like the
Canada,
friggin' lame gay smile he does at the end. That's, look at that. Ugh. Yeah, so I mean, Rick's News, yeah, let's follow that. I mean, what are we doing here, right?
I come to you with very, very grave information. It's official. The London Guardian and New York Times are reporting that what the UK said 4 days ago was true. Biden has quietly given authorization to use heavy missiles built and then launched and directed by Western forces deep into Russia, targeting their military targets. This is officially an act of war under international law. Putin has said it is, and has said he will probably use nuclear weapons in response. They can launch missiles today, tomorrow, and next week. I hope cooler minds prevail and this is reversed, but there needs to be a bigger debate about this, and people need to get past their normalcy bias and realize that this is a very serious issue, and almost all analysts agree it's a probability of escalation in nuclear war.
I think that's maybe a bit much. Putin has been, let's see if we can find it. Putin reaction to NATO. He's addressed this, and I showed it on stream recently. Yeah, that's it there.
Дни мы видим и слышим, как на очень высоком
Oh, OBS is looking a little frozen. Stream still working, guys? Okay, something's going wrong here with Chrome. One moment, regaining control of my future.
Саму природу конфликта.
All right.
Это будет
That was
означать,
weird.
что страны НАТО, США, европейские страны воюют с Россией. А если это так, то, имея в виду изменение самой сути этого конфликта, мы будем принимать соответствующие решения, исходя из тех угроз, которые нам будут создаваться.
So Alex Jones was being little fiery, I think. Nowhere in his response to this has Putin said that he would use nukes. That's constantly being brought up. I mean, he had that one time where he said, if nukes are used on us, we'll use nukes. Explicitly said we would never start with nukes. So everybody's got to calm down a little bit off that nuke thing. Slightly better news here, I guess, ish, from England.
Good morning, everybody. Now, there's been a real turn up for the books here because just a couple of days ago, I was really concerned that the UK government, the Starmer regime, was going to allow Ukraine to deploy Storm Shadow weapons to fire deep into Russia and hit targets in Russia, which would have escalated the conflict there to World War III very, very quickly. He still wants to do that, clearly. And he went to the United States, to the White House with David Lammy. I can't believe that he's the Foreign Secretary of the UK, to speak to President Biden to discuss and have talks with what to do with these things. Clearly, the Starmer regime wanted to...
Oops. Sorry.
Yeah, because in conflict before now, but this is, you know, whether it's temporary or permanent, is at least a few days breathing space. Hopefully then this will become permanent. Everyone will realize this is a dreadful, utterly ridiculous thing to be doing. And this will destroy the reputation of the Starmer regime. I have no idea why he particularly wants to allow these missiles to be fired into Russia.
We bloody told you guys. We told you. You've been told, you've been told, you've been told. Put these lefties into power and it's war immediately. And look at this. This guy's been in office for weeks. This is like his first official act of diplomacy, is to throw the world into World War III. Wait to see what happens if Kamala gets in.
I can only assume that...
And we've got a whole other year of Trudeau up here, probably. So, I mean, World War III, everybody gun up. Oh, and they're also dropping the bomb. We covered this in yesterday's stream. NATO is putting out that Russia will be looking to cut internet lines. So, conveniently, they'll start firing missiles into Russia. And then NATO will cut our internet lines and blame it on Russia. So start thinking about Starlink, everybody. I know I am.
He's, linked with the cabal that wants this to happen. But very interestingly as well, just this morning, we have reports that 5 former UK defence secretaries have put together a joint statement with the former UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, calling on Keir Starmer to allow Ukraine to use these weapons, even without the consent of Biden in the White House and the US government. Boris Johnson's reported to have said, this is from the Standard, there's no conceivable case for delay. Well, yes, there is, because the rules of engagement of weapon systems mean that the US government has to give permission because they've got American components in the missile.
That Heritage Party, pretty cool stuff. Is that what, what's his name over in the UK there? Oh, having the blanks. Gamergate guy. He ran for politics. Was that Heritage Party? All right, we'll take a little levity break. If you're not following Steve Inman on X, this is one of the best accounts on there. Have a laugh, take a break.
Whatever the situation may be, this lady is taking a smack, she's taking a beating, she's obviously not fighting back, and obviously this man is concerned. He walks up, he's like, hey, what's going on here? And she's like, it's none of your business, old man. He's like, that may be true, but it became my business as soon as you put your hands on me. Now I'm putting my hands on you. Equal rights and lefts being distributed here tonight. Look, none of this is justified, but how about we just keep our hands to ourselves in the first freaking place and we can avoid problems like this? Not everybody's going to react the same like this man right right here was like, you touch me, I'm gonna touch you back. And booyah, ends up landing one right on the chin. For every action, there's a reaction, and it's also called fucking around and finding out real quick.
At least you have enough respect. Your mother raised you right. Nobody your mother raised you right because you fucking...
And Karen gets a taste of Chaz's hands. How about we just keep our hands to ourselves in the first fucking place and avoid situations like this? Yelling at Chaz about his parents not raising him right when she should be bitch slapping her parents, and instead Chaz does the job her parents should have done years ago. Karen showing her ignorance, thinking she can just put her hands on everybody and think there's gonna be no retaliation. Well, think again. Chaz's hands are rated E for everybody.
A little bit of an altercation going on between these two. And look at that smile. She goes in with a slap. And oh my God, he comes in with a big slappy meal. And it almost looks like she just bleeded ketchup packets. And now looking at him like, get your hands off me. Well, you shouldn't have put your hands on him in the first place, you dumb broad. Look, if you're the size of Lauryn Hill, it's not a hill worth dying on. Look at this smile, condescending, slaps him thinking he's not going to do anything back. Equal rights and lefts being displayed here tonight as she pulls off a slip-a-doodle-doo. She ends up hitting the ketchup packet jackpot as she tries to get back up. This man's like, you want some more? She's like, no, I don't want any more. Maybe discount Lauryn Hill will realize the next time she wants to put her hands on somebody that Darren's hands are rated E for everyone. Well, Chaz in the hat seems to be a touchy-feely bully, and it looks like Kyle's had enough of this rear naked poke attempt delivered by Chaz, but Chaz ends up taking one on the snot locker and ends up folding over like an
instant
origami
KO
piece of art. Now looking like a broken snow angel in the clearance rack in a Dollar General store near you. It's pretty obvious the body language of Kyle warning Chaz to back off and stop trying to pull off this rear naked poke. It's not a rear naked choke, it's a perverted rear naked poke because he's got feelings, but booyah! Smacks over feelings, and for that reason, Chaz is now traveling to Goo Goo Gaga land, listening to nursery rhymes along the way. You know, nowadays parents are so shitty they let their kids do whatever the hell they want as long as they're on the tablet and out of their hair. But then shitty kids like this come out of the toxic sewer their parents raised them in, making sure friends capturing this. She puts her hands on the young man and he puts his hands right back on that young lady. Or person, place, or thing she doesn't even deserve to be called a lady. Look, I don't condone any of this shit. How about we keep our hands to ourselves in the first fucking place and avoid situations like this and humiliate it for all of us to witness as a lesson to keep your hands to yourself. Not everybody's a gentleman, not everybody reacts the same. Some people believe in equal rights and equal fights. After crime victim, she actually goes back in for seconds and ends up getting slammed into the freaking concrete for her efforts. Parents, do better. Sometimes you might score yourself a concussion as a repercussion of f***ing around and finding out real quick.
Oh, she got body slammed. Yeah, Steve Inman, that's great. Want to take a break from all this madness in the world? Great place to take a break. Yeah, and wow, Elon just put people up in space and they came down safe. I don't get how this guy can be doing all this stuff. It's bonkers. And then now Yemen has moved into Syria to fight Israeli forces. What is going on in this world? And lawfare is everywhere now with the liberals. You got Brazil outlawing X, outlawing Starlink, seizing the funds of Starlink to pay for legal bills that they created. And in Italy, they're trying to jail the prime minister for barring immigrants. Kidnapping charges. For trying to stop ships from landing in Italy. We were just getting overrun a couple years ago. Venezuela foils alleged coup, arrests foreigners. CIA much? Venezuelan government seizes more than 400 weapons entered illegally to the country from the United States. U.S. government wants to start a civil war in Venezuela. Yeah, don't believe the hype about what's going on in Venezuela. 100% CIA coup. They're trying to do Ukrainian Maidan in Venezuela and always have been. Don't have to like, socialist, communist policies necessarily of these leaders, but we're being lied to heavily in Venezuela. So interesting stuff happening today. It starts with questioning Kamala from the debate. During the debate with Trump, Kamala claimed that no U.S. forces were in active combat zones. However, U.S. Central Command said that U.S. forces were in operation in western Iraq on August 29th. 7 U.S. soldiers were injured as more than 200 troops from both the U.S. and Iraq, including elite Army Rangers backing up the main assault force, hunted down fighters in bunkers over miles of remote terrain. The operation led to the deaths of 14 insurgents, including Abu Ali al-Tunisi, one of the most significant bomb makers for ISIS. Allegedly. The announcement of the operation was made on August 30th, long before the debate took place, and it would have been easy for ABC to fact-check. Yeah, no shit. And let's not talk about Syria or any of the other secret wars we're involved with, and you're just shitting me if you're telling me that, like, no U.S. personnel have done anything in Ukraine. I mean, come on. So that leads right to this. Breaking news. When was this? Only less than an hour ago. ABC News whistleblower swears under penalty of perjury that the Kamala Harris campaign dictated the terms of the questions during the presidential debate. Furthermore, the Harris campaign insisted upon live fact-checking of Donald Trump during the debate. ABC News fact-checked Trump at least 5 times and did not fact-check Harris once, despite the Democratic candidate telling provable lies such as the Fine People hoax and the bloodbath hoax. Oh, God, and what else? There's utter demonstrable lies about the economy. The whistleblower signed the affidavit in New York and has sent a copy to Speaker Mike Johnson, the notarized document states. The unnamed individual states that he or she is in possession of secret recordings that will prove that ABC News rigged the presidential debate. ABC News committed election interference. This is a massive scandal. So look at this. Full-on notarized whistleblower documents. This should be fun watching no one cover this. But I mean, it was obvious that the fix was in. Am I right? So let's get to today's show. Gotta grab the film again. I unfortunately took that down like an idiot. Try to get ready for this stuff in advance. There's so much to do when you're doing a live stream. Okay, so here we go. Copy, bring it over to here. All right, we are going to watch Who is Our Real Enemy from Canadian Patriot. This is directed, and I'm narrating this one, I think. Written by Matthew Arrett and Cynthia Chung.
We are being told daily that China is interfering in our country's democracies. From secret police stations, military balloon attacks, honeypots, biowarfare, economic manipulation, and election interference, the media, intelligence agencies, and political class have all come to agree there isn't a single part of our lives that isn't threatened by the evil agenda of the Chinese. Obviously, these allegations insinuate operations well above and beyond the normal levels of statecraft and diplomacy expected of internationally engaged nations. Such bold claims must be backed up by solid evidence, right? It's not like our media and governments would lie to us. Would they?
I think we will find weapons of mass destruction. I think it's important that we do. He's lying to him when he says he doesn't have weapons of mass destruction.
It's high time we enumerate these many allegations and check the available facts, lest we rush into judgments that, as a nation, could derail us from the track to world peace. As the world is slowly learning from the debacle in Ukraine, nations acting under false pretenses bear heavy costs. On November 2016, everyone knew that Russia had taken control of the USA. Great patriots like former FBI Director Robert Mueller and the mainstream media worked closely to ensure that Americans understood that Donald Trump's victory against Hillary Clinton was made possible by Russian WikiLeaks and Russian financing directly from the Kremlin.
The Russian government, they have hacked American websites, American accounts of private people, of institutions. Then they have given that information to WikiLeaks for the purpose of putting it on the internet, clearly from Putin himself.
All educated citizens were taught to have these correct opinions, and they were also taught to believe that Russia selected Donald Trump in order to revive right-wing racist extremism in order to destroy American democracy from within. The FBI taught educated Americans that uneducated Trump-supporting domestic terrorists tried to kidnap Democratic Governor Gretchen Whitmer in 2020, which was thankfully thwarted by the astute, patriotic FBI. These well-educated Americans also learned that those same white supremacist extremists tried to take control of the USA in the worst insurgency on American soil since the Civil War on January 6, 2021. And then...
No, and then!
Something happened.
It might not have produced everything of what some Republicans hoped for. It is, regardless, devastating to the FBI, and to a degree, it does exonerate Donald Trump.
So he said it exonerated Donald Trump to a degree, but in the past, the media has vouched for the debunked Steele dossier.
Based on our own reporting and word from numerous official sources, the dossier, in fact, is far from bogus.
No major thing from the dossier has been conclusively disproven.
We already know that the part about the coverage that they have on him with sex actions is supposed to be true.
The intelligence community has corroborated, whoever paid for it, has corroborated a lot of the information that was in there to begin with.
Going to jump in to add any smokers watching. We found the greatest deal at Smokes Canada. You see the banner and QR code down there. We're talking cartons for 39 Canadian buckaroonies. Let's spread it.
The Durham report was published demonstrating that Russiagate was a lie. Neither the FBI nor CIA had a shred of evidence that the Russian government had any influence over President Trump. And without issuing an overt apology, even CIA mouthpieces like CNN had to admit it was all a fraud. The reality was that the Christopher Steele dirty dossier was created out of thin air by MI6 operatives, including Sir Richard Dearlove, the former head of MI6, who had earlier overseen the creation of another sexed-up dossier that proved Iraq had weapons of mass destruction, leading to the murder of millions, the overthrow of Iraq, and a surveillance state dragnet under the Five Eyes. When evidence emerged that the Whitmer kidnapping plot of 2018 was entirely staged and carried out by FBI informants who made up 12 of the 16 members of the domestic terror cell, the issue moved from extremism to FBI entrapment. And what about January 6th? According to FBI whistleblower testimony and video evidence which has been made public, it appears that the same FBI operation which staged the Michigan kidnapping operation was done again on a national scale, with FBI informants and agents instigating violence the entire time.
And refused to condemn white supremacists and hate groups.
It wouldn't be surprising, since Steve D'Antuono, the FBI's Michigan bureau chief during the Whitmer fiasco, was immediately promoted to manage the Washington, D.C. bureau, where he oversaw the January 6th insurgency. During the same time period, it was revealed by leaked FBI documents that Joshua Caleb Sutter, controller of the white supremacist group Atomwaffen, and also the Satanic Temple of Blood cult, was paid over $180,000 by the FBI since 2003, $80,000 of which was paid out after 2018. An often forgotten Fordham University study from 2013 featuring analysis of over 138 cases of terrorism stopped by the valiant FBI since 9/11 demonstrated the embarrassing fact that almost no instances existed of domestic terrorism arising without the direction of the FBI itself. Reporting on the Fordham study, The Nation magazine stated,
"Nearly every major post-9/11 terrorism-related prosecution has involved a sting operation, at the center of which is a government informant. In these cases, the informants, who work for money or are seeking leniency on criminal charges of their own, have crossed the line from merely observing potential criminal behavior to encouraging and assisting people to participate in plots that are largely scripted by the FBI itself. Under the FBI's guiding hand, the informants provide the weapons, suggest the targets, and even initiate the inflammatory political rhetoric that later elevates the charges to the level of terrorism.
What about 9/11 itself, you ask? Well, let's just say 2 planes can't cause 3 buildings to collapse without more than a little help. Perhaps whoever was in charge of the FBI when 9/11 happened might know something about that paradox. Despite all of the lies which have come to the surface in recent years, it is no small irony that the same script is currently being pulled out of the dumpster, dusted off, and attempted once more as the Washington Post proclaims that Russia is out to do it again. What the Durham report proves they never did in the first place. One could even say they're determined to strike. When faced with this disturbing array of evidence, a conspiracy theorist, or realist as they are now known, might be forgiven for concluding that the USA's FBI, CIA, and Britain's MI6 appear to be colluding together to coerce Americans to live in fear of foreign governments in Eurasia, out to destroy our freedoms, while ignoring the fact that the actual foreign interference into our democratic institutions appears to be coming from those same agencies which have been financing terrorism, controlling media, and managing puppet politicians for decades. But, as the great washed and educated conspiracy theorists of Russiagate will tell us, the news media never lies, unless it's Fox News. And the intelligence community has cleaned up its act ever since the Church Committee brought the corruption of the CIA into the light over 40 years ago. Anything else is just misinformation.
But the destruction of the rule of law is a tremendous threat to Western civilization. And I was asked the other day, and I took a little heat for it. They said, who's our biggest threat? Is it China, sir? Is it Russia? I said, no, our biggest threat are high-level politicians that work in the United States government.
Here, I'll put, since we got a little crowd on YouTube, I'll put on part 1 of this right now. CanadianPatriot.org, great place for information. Part 1 of the interference documentary. I hope we get back to this. This one's fun. There's a lot more comedy content in this than we usually have.
Operations Center, which interfaced between
there we
Kiev
go.
and
Now I got
TRUDEAU
the chat
directly
coming
and
into
military
OBS. I see
during
you
the crisis.
guys. Aloha
Due to the
Q.
crisis caused by this terrorist cell, martial law was imposed onto Quebec for the month of October in
Damn, that's the
1970,
truth. OMG.
as
Okay,
the
let me rewind
FLQ
this.
terror-
This one's quiet. Get the volume turned up a bit here in OBS. One moment, please. Go into theater mode, get that gain turned up. My goal in 2 years is to pay a kid to do this. Hopefully a really good looking young girl. Can't stop seeing resemblance to Castro on Trudeau. No joke. Yeah, I mean, when you see those pictures of, 30-year-old Castro and 30-year-old Trudeau, it's pretty wild. Looks nothing like his old man. No, not really. Not really. FFF 710, home of hip-hop, Fred Fury, and the Potweiler. Hey, man. That's quite the handle. Good to see you. All right, let's get this operation on the road. Keep chatting, guys. We'll watch the first part of the doc. This one's actually more about what we're talking about right now. Edge of World War III. Let's spread it.
In our last episode, we demonstrated how the Russian foreign interference narrative was based on fictitious lies cooked up in the bowels of British intelligence.
Oh, is this part 3? Sorry, it's already been 2 years. Trying to remember how this goes.
In order to undo the presidency of Donald Trump. The recently published Durham report even forced such disinformation outlets as CNN to admit that the FBI promoted the story known as Russiagate without any actual evidence. Yet, despite these revelations, citizens are once again falling for the exact same psyop, but this time with a Canadian twist. Rather than focus on the role of the financial oligarchy, which created and manages global intelligence agencies, military operations, and supranational corporations, Canadians from all sides of the political spectrum have found themselves falling head over heels for a newly rebranded foreign interference story told by our very own patriotic intelligence agencies. The foreign aggressor in this story is, of course, China. Canadians woke up the morning of February 17, 2023, to hear that leaked CSIS reports claimed that Beijing used intermediaries to finance the Liberal Party in the elections of 2019 and again in 2021.
So then what was part 1 was the Chinese police stations debunk. I'll show that one another time. Maybe wait for China to become immediately irrelevant, though they're kind of always relevant. If they don't blame Russia for our problems, they blame China.
With the implied aim of installing Justin Trudeau as puppet premier of the Chinese Communist Party.
Russia hates
The parallels to the FBI's debunked Russiagate hoax are hard to ignore.
Russia.
In both narratives, anonymous, unverifiable sources are cited by Canadian and American intelligence agencies to advance the
Delay say, so are there actually police stations here? No, not even remotely in any way. There's no proof of any kind whatsoever. I even called the Chinese embassy to talk to them about it. And in the documentary, we break it down. It's an absolutely 100% made up thing by very powerful grievance groups over here and in America that are, expats, people that have been kicked out of China or left, sometimes for good reasons, but mostly for bad, kicked out for, true, actual sedition and insurrection against the country. The most prominent would be the insane billionaire that started the Falun Gong cult, which is what publishes Epoch Times. Actually, he was going to be arrested and jailed or worse in China for sedition. He thinks he should be the emperor of China. Another is I'm going to forget his name. Another oligarch who was scheming with the CIA to overthrow the Chinese government, who is the financial backer of Steve Bannon. And it's all these groups, along with Soros groups. That's another documentary we made I could show you as well. China kicked out George Soros after Tiananmen Square and forbid him and his companies from ever doing business in China again. And we should follow his lead. So you have these extremely powerful groups all over the world that are in bed with our controlled media that are constantly putting out these stories that Chinese election interference, Chinese police stations. What these police stations are just these help centers that they set up, and it's NGOs. It isn't directly the Chinese government. These help centers that have been around forever, derived from the first waves of mass Chinese immigration to build the railroads, to help immigrants with all sorts of resources and help and that kind of thing. They started spreading the rumor that they're police stations and they arrest Chinese nationals and stuff like that and punish them through these police stations, which, it's laughably ridiculous. Like the Chinese balloons, it's as real as the Chinese balloons. Moniker says, I remember that when Bannon declared a new country a few years ago. Yep, And Bannon is another figure. This is another documentary that we've been waiting to make. We purposefully waited at the time just because it's super dangerous to go after Bannon. The guy is so connected to intelligence. He's part of a Catholic secret society that has their own castle and prefecture over in Bavaria. I don't want to say something incorrect, that I'd have to get back to it. And so Matt's written an article and a whole script. Let me get over to Canadian Patriot again. CanadianPatriot.org. This is the place. Search is our friend. Steve Bannon. Steve Bannon and China's deep state. Whoa. That's his name. That's the billionaire that backs him. And he was kicked out of China. And these guys just work endlessly to spread true disinformation about China. And this is the source for so much stuff that comes out of China. And Falun Gong as well. Let's see if we can find something quick about them. Gong. Falun Gong, yeah. That's a link to an interview. So they are just such massive liars about so much in the world. Unfortunately, they also finance Epoch Times, which is, for the most part, a really good rag. Lots of good information, lots of good videos, but thoroughly corrupt. If you can't trust anything they say about China. Sloppy Steve, yeah. It's infuriating because, again, just like Epoch Times, Steve Bannon is a source for lots of great stuff going on, you know. No one can deny his hand in getting Trump into power, but there's probably a really good reason Trump fired him. Okay, let's roll back on our election interference NATO doc.
Idea that Russia and China have infiltrated Western democracies. In neither case are the claims proven, and good citizens are expected to assume their national intelligence agencies truly are patriotic organizations who truly care about their freedom. Since being made public, this gossip has been spread by extremely cooperative mainstream media outlets that are ironically funded by the very same liberal government which is supposed to be captured by the Chinese enemy. What are some of these allegations which we must assume China is guilty of? It is asserted by classified CSIS reports that the Chinese government gave $250,000 to 11 political candidates for the 2019 election. It is asserted that Chinese agents were assisting Canadian candidates running for political offices. It is asserted that the Chinese government interfered with the nomination of Han Dong as the Liberal Party candidate in Don Valley North. The Chinese government ran an orchestrated machine to ensure a minority liberal government was returned, and that Beijing was determined that the conservatives did not win.
Delay, extremely dislike Canadian media and our outlets. Journalism from unpaid sources are the way to go. Yeah, we're just gone over here. We don't even have something as semi-okay as Fox in the States. And media here has been completely freed from any regulations that force them to give both sides of the story. They're just 100% fronts for corporations and political parties, left political parties. Toker Joker 2020. Good to see you on X. Play or people who are think tanks and show unbiased results. Yeah, so I mean, we know it's happening. They're dying. They're dead. And that's why this whole misinformation, disinformation, why these words become hot, why everybody's obsessed with censoring and shutting down YouTubers rumblers and all this. It's because they want to cut off our access to media before they enact the full Great Reset. Moniker agreed. Same in the U.S. Our media sucks dingleberries for Zima. it's all an act. Politicians too. Yeah, and as good as it gets down there is Fox, and they showed themselves to be just as corrupt during COVID. It's crazy. I can't even talk to people. No one has a clue. Just a few guys or people have a clue. I don't want to admit so. Yeah, it's harsh out there. I mean, you don't have media that controlled without consequences, and we've got a truly uninformed populace now, which is the opposite of what the founding fathers wanted in America. In Canada, maybe they wanted to keep us stupid. That's arguable. I've also made excellent films for Canadian Patriot called the Secret History of America and the Unfinished Symphony about how America's republic has been corrupted and missed opportunities for Canada to join the republic as well. Blay says, I'm still unvaxxed, and the amount of hardship that was dealt to me, it's nuts. Yeah. Families broken up. I can attest to that. So many can attest to that. Families split in half, don't talk to each other anymore over a useless shot. Moniker, persecution, the Apostle Paul warned us. Yeah, he sure did. And we've been warning everybody for years. All of this stuff we've warned everyone about. It's been decades now. And it all just goes exactly like we warned them, and all they do is screech racist. Speaking of,
the Chinese government stopped the Conservative Party and ensured that select conservative candidates were defeated. The Globe and Mail asserts that Chinese government officials have taken actions to target Conservative MP Michael Chong, his family, and other MPs. And
really glad to hear others with me. Big hug, guys. Yeah, right back at you.
Even former Conservative Party leader Aaron O'Toole has come out asserting that his failure as a leader had less to do with his support for draconian lockdowns and everything to do with
cool.
Chinese
The emote wall is working.
Interference.
Feel free to spam those
The difficulty in
emojis, guys.
assessing the truthfulness or dishonesty of these allegations is challenging, to say the least. No one who has read the CSIS reports has been allowed to speak of their content due to Canada's secrecy laws. Meanwhile, the few who have read them, such as former Governor General David Johnston, says they are full of hot air. And others who are allowed to read them, such as Pierre Poilievre, have turned down the offer.
The government will not pull me into a room, stamp public documents secret, and then tell me I can't speak.
Poilievre's excuse for not reading the reports is that if he does, then he will be forced to not speak about what he read, since they are still classified.
This isn't the best look for Poilievre. Home of hip hop. I'm an online radio station, got out of mainstream radio in 2000 when last independent station died. Yeah, I mean, remember it used to be college radio charts and used to be a great way to get bands out there. And I had a band in the 90s, and we did lots of touring of college radio stations to try to promote stuff. Obviously didn't work out for us like it does for 99.9%, but, college radio was its own thing. Independent college news was its own thing. So, it's mostly gone now. Who really has radios? So, yeah, online's where it's at. Good for you, man. So everyone can see the title here. And this is you're coming in from X. So if we search that FFF710, I'm sure you'll find it on X. Go check it out. Especially you guys, home of hip-hop, so I assume you're pretty exclusive to hip-hop. People are loving the hip-hop, independent hip-hop. Go check that out. It's great to have you here, man. I was in a band during MySpace days, yes. I was lucky to have that to promote. Yeah, and then, and that hung on for years. Still is a way. That was its last known purpose.
But if he doesn't read that.
But like everything else now, it's all conglomerates. So everything's done through your distributor because you need to get distribution to get onto the streaming platform. So you have to go through CD Baby or or whatever these. I'm trying to remember the other big one. Most hip hop guys go through it, and then you're just part of the machine at that point. Really.
Then he is free to speculate freely about their content endlessly. As citizens who don't have access to the classified CSIS report itself, we find ourselves asking, who can we trust? David Johnston's well-known connections to the Trudeau family.
Been doing live shows since 2020 on Mixlr platform outside of Canada. Interesting. Haven't heard of Mixlr. If whitewash is a term, yeah, it is. Yeah, I know, man. Take it back here, a chunk.
Not speak about what he read since they are still classified. But if he doesn't read them, then he is free to speculate freely about their content endlessly. As citizens who don't have access to the classified CSIS report itself, we find ourselves asking, who can we trust? David Johnston's well-known connections to the Trudeau family make his opinions appear worthless in the eyes of many who doubt the validity of his report. So, let's take a step back and look at the problem from another vantage point. Since this information is coming from Canada's intelligence agencies, maybe it would be helpful to take a deep breath, step back from the drama and ask, what exactly is CSIS, or the RCMP for that matter? And are they the patriotic, freedom-loving institutions we have been told? Or is a darker picture of another foreign power found to be steering our governments and undermining our democracies, which may not have either Russian or Chinese characteristics? Formed on March 6, 1946, the UK-USA Signals Agreement established what became known as the Five Eyes, that soon involved a global dragnet of intelligence agencies led by Britain's GCHQ and MI6. Soon, other Anglo-Saxon spy agencies such as Canada's Communications Security Establishment and RCMP joined into the alliance, along with partner agencies in Australia and New Zealand. It is no coincidence that March 6, 1946 was also the same day that Winston Churchill delivered his infamous Iron Curtain speech.
You guys follow any of that drama that came up when Tucker had that guy on who had some unnice things to say about Winston Churchill? Man, I've never seen conservatives instantly go woke so quickly. You know, and what I don't get is why it's a controversy that Winston Churchill was an establishment politician, globalist that did all sorts of dirty stuff to get into power, stay in power, and tried to maintain Britain's control over the world. I don't see people have beatified him into a friggin' saint, so that you can't even say anything about him at all. He walks on holy ground. Absolutely wild to watch.
In Fulton, Missouri, setting into motion the framework.
Like you'd think people would learn. History isn't what we're told. You'd think people would be a little bit more open to it, especially on, quote unquote, our side. With all we've learned, all the lies that we've been told, and we're all becoming so cynical and so jaded because of it. But still holding on to a few of these myths, as if they're factual truths
of the Cold War.
In the Baltic, to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across the continent.
Monica, he was right. I believe so too.
Of the ancient state
Churchill did some dirty stuff. Evidence points to the fact that he wanted war. Churchill destroyed the empire. Potentially. Maybe destroyed the good part of it, but I think we're still living in it. It shatters the lies. Yeah, I live to have lies shattered.
Behind that line lie all the capitals of the ancient states of Central and Eastern Europe.
Under this new order ushered in by President Truman and Churchill, America's OSS was disbanded, and President Franklin Roosevelt's dream of a US-Russia-China alliance to shape the post-war world was destroyed. In this new scheme for a new world order, America's closest allies that fought by her side to prevent the success of the Nazi war machine were now rebranded as America's enemies, while America's enemies became her closest allies. An Anglo-American special relationship was launched by Truman, and on September 8, 1947, a new intelligence service was created modeled on Britain's MI6 called the Central Intelligence Agency. During the Cold War, Anglo-Saxon governments worked together both to conduct asymmetric warfare and espionage against Russia and China abroad, while also spying on citizens within the nations of the Five Eyes directly. Since it is illegal for national governments of the Five Eyes to infringe upon the civil liberties of their own citizens through mass surveillance, it was deemed expedient for the Five Eyes to create a project dubbed Echelon in order to coordinate spying on citizens globally within and outside of the alliance itself. The Five Eyes agencies were so secretive that even elected government officials did not know of its existence until the 1970s. Take the case of Australia's Prime Minister, Gough Whitlam. As soon as Whitlam discovered the existence of this agency's tentacles within his own nation, he demanded that it be shut down. But a day before he was to announce his plan to the Australian Parliament, he was called into the Governor-General's office and was promptly fired. That's right. For Commonwealth members of the Five Eyes, the actual head of state is the monarchy's unelected Governor-General and not the Prime Minister. As such, Prime Ministers can, and in the case of Australia, have been fired for disrupting imperial plans.
So that's us in Canada. The voted for candidates and parties can be removed at the behest of the Queen and King.
It is well known that the Five Eyes interfaces closely with another organization called the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, or simply NATO. NATO was created in 1949 to bypass the influence which Russia and China held within the United Nations Security Council. And this organization wasted no time to incorporate leading Nazis into its governing structure. Between 1950 until the 1980s, NATO had multiple unreconstructed Nazis in control of multiple departments, including several consecutive commanders of Central Europe. If you find this hard to believe, let's have a look at a few of them. Adolf Heusinger, Chief of Staff of the General Nazis during World War II. In the post-war age, he found new employment as Chief of the West German Army and General of the Bundeswehr from 1957 to 1961.
And think of all the, janitors from Auschwitz and stuff that they've gone after, put in prison, executed.
From 1961 to 1964, Heusinger became chairman of the NATO Military Committee, but he wasn't alone. In fact, the position of NATO Commander-in-Chief of Allied Forces Central Europe was a position that was filled solely by former Nazis for 16 years straight, between 1967 and 1983. Even Hitler's intelligence chief, Reinhard Gehlen, found new employment under the CIA's Allen Dulles as the head of West German intelligence from 1956 until 1968. Among those World War II killers who worked with Gehlen in Europe was Stefan Bandera, the vicious Ukrainian fascist, and thousands of members of the Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, whose skills were put to work carrying out asymmetric warfare against socialist-leaning leaders of Europe and also the population more broadly. In The Empire on Which the Black Sun Never Set, historian Cynthia Chung noted that a vast, secret fascist army of Nazis and Italian fascist stay-behinds was organized under NATO.
These stay-behinds were used to carry out assassinations of anti-imperial leaders like Italy's former Prime Minister Aldo Moro in 1978, Sweden's Prime Minister Olof Palme in 1986, known as Sweden's JFK, Italian industrialist Enrico Mattei in 1960, Turkey's Prime Minister Adnan Menderes in 1961, along with 2 cabinet colleagues, and U.S. President Kennedy in 1963, and multiple attempts against French President Charles de Gaulle.
Chung writes that on top of targeted assassinations, NATO's secret armies
were to be used against the people. The desire was that by staging false flag operations that were blamed on communists, panic and revulsion would be invoked, sending voters flocking to the welcoming arms to so-called secure right-wing governments.
In 1959, an internal NATO briefing minute dated June 1st of that year slipped into the hands of a British newspaper, which revealed that the task of the stay-behind units had been switched from confronting a Soviet invasion to confronting an internal subversion. The secret armies were henceforth to play a determining role not only in the general policy level of domestic warfare, but also in the politics of domestic emergency. What this meant was that a secret army of stay-behind units under the direction of NATO, in absence of a Soviet threat, were to direct their actions to the internal matters which would include espionage and acts of terrorism on the citizens of Europe, with the support and cover of those nations' police units. This would be used to further centralize control within right-wing governments who supported the NATO apparatus. Of the dozens of cases of domestic terror unleashed by this operation across Europe, the most well-documented is the Years of Lead, launched in Italy in 1969, which saw hundreds of bombs detonated by supposedly communist terrorist cells in shopping malls, trains, and other public venues, killing hundreds. As was revealed in declassified reports, these terror cells did not receive their funding, support, and directives from either the Kremlin or Beijing, as duped citizens were led to believe, but rather by NATO and the Five Eyes. NATO's strategy of tension finally became public knowledge, dubbed Operation Gladio, when Italian Prime Minister Andreotti revealed it to the world in a public speech in 1992. The significance for Canada will be known shortly.
Filet, wish they explained this in history or civics. God, tell me about it, right? They should teach real history, real objective history in history. Kids should be taught how to bank, how to invest, how to, there should be enrollment systems and in play at school, field trips to get kids involved in local politics. You know? It's just, school system is made for us to be stupid.
The growth of the surveillance state across the Five Eyes nations has been made possible by the belief that terrorism, both foreign and domestic, is such a threat that resisting it requires the abandonment of civil liberties in order to protect the greater good. But is this popular belief true? In 2016, a Canadian appeals court overruled guilty sentences handed down to a Canadian couple who were caught by the RCMP before their 2016 jihadi plot to bomb a public venue on Canada Day could occur. Why did the appeals judge overrule their sentence? Because on closer examination, it was discovered that every single member of the operation which radicalized the young people, trained them to make bombs, and even scripted their attack were RCMP informants.
Honestly, it's so watered down now. Even back in 2003-04, I questioned my teacher about lack of study of information. He said I did well and should continue into politics. Being a lobbyist is not for me. Well, you know, the far more effective way that you could get involved is to get into your local provincial political party and start getting active there. Don't know if you caught any of the streams that I've had with the Albertan Holmes family. They woke up only during the pandemic, and they found Canadian Patriot and Matt Arrett and the whole family as one got involved with the UCP party in Alberta. That's the provincial arm of the feeder party to the National Conservative Party. And now every single member of the family, there's what, 6 of them? 6 of them all have seats on the board now. And they get to bring up policy topics, vote on them, and then if those votes get passed, it gets put to the annual general meeting, and if passed there, then the provincial party has to take up those as party platform. So that's something that we can do. That's something I'll be doing here. The Yukon party is the equivalent up here, but the constituency is so small up here, they don't do really anything at all. Maybe the odd barbecue. They just had one until the election is in full force, but when that's in full force, I'll be going to the meetings and setting up tables and just, listening to the talks and the speeches and voting on things like that. At least join a party. That's my advice. So Trudeau's dad invoked all this BS because of Five Eyes back in the day. Yeah. So, again, like son, like father. He used the War Measures Act, but the whole thing was a RCMP op. Moniker, it's pretty awesome that we can converse here thousands of miles apart. Isn't it great? And we get people from all over the world in here. And, I guess we're pretty geopolitically focused. So, we get really interesting conversations in here. It's just so fascinating that we can broadcast. When we were kids, there were only the networks. Only the networks could do this. That's why they hate us. They hate our freedoms. To take something from George Bush. You got it. I'm in Ottawa, and we are in need of strong leadership. Break away from media's BS. Yeah, you probably know I got out of Ottawa. Well, almost a little over exactly a year ago. So I'm up in the Yukon and loving it. Feels a lot less claustrophobic up here. All right, roll in again. I'll take it back 10 seconds.
Operation which radicalized the young people, trained them to make bombs, and even scripted their attack were RCMP informants. Earlier cases of controlled domestic terrorist movements in Canada saw CSIS, that is Canada's Security and Intelligence Service,
all right, Filet, good luck.
Erased thousands of hours of wiretaps of Sikh terrorists.
I think unless people with our reasonable view of the world, unless you are, taking political action and you've got something to do in that department, then, you can get more done in the cities that way. But I would counsel anyone to get as far out of cities as possible. Because, just like the news today with the missiles and stuff, who knows what's coming down the pipes. Get Starlink and get the hell out of Dodge.
That detonated bombs in 1984, which led to 329 dead in the worst act of aviation terrorism until 9/11.
I think you're just convincing my wife and her family. You got resistance there? Yeah, these decisions aren't easy. Rain, my often co-host on the channel, has been trying to get me up here for... He moved up about 15 years ago. He's been trying to get me up here for 14 and a half years. And, we started to get really serious about it in the run-up to COVID. And then, once the travel ban in Canada hit, there wasn't a question anymore. Once I became a prisoner in my own country for not taking an experimental medical shot, that was it. So, but it still took a couple years for me to really feel I was ready to do it. It's a huge thing to pick up roots, and I'm in my 50s up in a new, and it's not just like a new city. I'm 30 minutes outside of Whitehorse. We're out in the woods here. It's a very different life, and I don't know anybody, and I rely on on Rain for, social connections and just about everything, because he knows where everything is, and I don't know squat. It's kind of hard to do when you're older, but I just knew I had to do it. And now there's a much bigger sense of ease over my life, knowing that the shit hits the fan, at least I'm already out in the woods. In Ottawa, they could send 2 cops out to control like 4 city blocks, right? Nobody be able to do anything. Out here, they would need the National Guard. The nearest house is 2 miles down the road. So, it makes you feel better. Can't recommend it enough. Unless, of course, like I said, you do have a plan of action, then cities are great for that. Of course, that's where the machines of power are located. And we need people in cities to do stuff. But if you don't have any plans, you just want to chill. Most people want to retire out of the city. Might as well get on with it now.
What was on those wiretaps that...
Yeah, but who the hell wants to go to Sweden? Sweden has destroyed itself. They're going to embark, I think, soon on a multi-decadal plan to repair their country. You can see the votes are going more and more conservative every time. Right-wing parties are rising, and there's only so many of their women that can be raped by mass immigration before the country starts to turn around. In 2000, I called Yukon home, yet not allowed to return till now. I'm at the bottom of a mountain in Alberta. Oh, great. Alberta's beautiful. Going to get over there soon. That's where the Holmes family is. Going to go visit them first opportunity I get. Next flight will be Vancouver, though, where the National Citizens Inquiry is having their freshest set of hearings. This time not about the shot or the lockdown, about the safety of children in Canada. Going to be super interesting. 3 days, October 21, I think. And I'll be having the organizers of the NCI on the show very soon for a full interview to break it all down for us. I've been making video intros and stuff for them. Going to be really exciting. Can't wait to share that. Belay says the plan is tied with wife's family. We own property in West Ottawa. Yeah, so I mean, there's a lot to do. Property prices are perhaps they're so overblown in Ottawa. There's lots of places you can go. Where are you targeting? Lots of places you can go that still have, somewhat decent property prices. Out east, definitely. Yukon, not so much. It's shocking how much housing costs up here. Sweden has had a major immigrant issue. True, yeah. It's hell over there. They have no-go zones. The police will keep white people out of certain areas. Since the Million Man March back in 2010 or something. Yeah, this started, just like us. They had the multicultural program instituted in the 70s. Mass waves starting in the 80s, but then like the really modern mass stuff is in the new millennium they just opened the gates, and it's just bonkers over there.
CSIS was so afraid the public would see. Is it possible that those Sikh terrorists were also groomed by Canadian intelligence agencies, just as the more recent jihadi terror cell had been groomed in 2016? Or is it more similar to the case of the FBI handlers of Egyptian informant Ahmad Salem, who ignored the dozens of warnings of their informant and let the 1993 World Trade Center bombing take place, even though it could have easily been
getting the quality better
prevented? In that case, Salem had the wits to secretly record hundreds of hours of conversation with his FBI handlers, which were then made public by the New York Times on October 28, 1993. By destroying their wiretaps, CSIS ensured that these questions will never be answered. And while Canadians were told that only racists and white supremacists resist government lockdowns or promote trucker protests, it is too often forgotten that Canada's largest white supremacist group, known as the Heritage Front, was revealed to have been founded by a CSIS agent named Grant Bristol, who ran the organization between 1988 and 1994. Anglo-Canadian intelligence controls of domestic terrorism,
Here we go on Daddy's War Measures Act.
Operation Gladio tactics, can even be traced as far back as the nominally Maoist terrorist organization Le Front de Libération de Québec of the 1960s that set dozens of mailbox bombs off across the province. Not only did the RCMP security services get caught red-handed managing FLQ cells, spreading FLQ graffiti on buildings, and even supplying explosives to the group itself, but the FLQ's intellectual leader, Pierre Valliere, was also the editor-in-chief of the very same magazine, Cité Libre, which was run for a decade by none other than Canada's Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. As Pierre Valliere himself later wrote in
Was like Canada Day every day. The convoy? Yeah, what a joyous, wonderful time that was. I was out every day with the gimbal. That's how we got our following on YouTube. We started with 15 subs and ended up with 2,200 or something like that. But unfortunately, and unsurprisingly, YouTube won't monetize us. So we've kind of given up on it. And now it's been a while, so actually trying to get watch hours back up on YouTube and going to apply again, see if the tides have turned. But in the meantime, as you guys can see, viewership is very quiet on YouTube. We'll have to keep watching. Appreciate anyone sharing out our streams on YouTube. Will really help. We just need raw watch hours. We've got the subs. We just need to get people back on YouTube. We've just been doing it over on Rumble mostly and X. X has become our biggest platform by far. But yeah, any help you guys can give, share things out, boost us in the algorithm, and we'll see.
Cité Libre, which was run for a decade by none other than Canada's Prime Minister, Pierre Elliott Trudeau. As Pierre Valliere himself later wrote in his Execution of Pierre Laporte, it was a special operation division of the RCMP that oversaw the murder of the kidnapped Deputy Premier of Quebec in 1970, and the illegal arrest of over 400 Quebec citizens under the fog of domestic terrorism, itself a construct of the same department of the RCMP and the Strategic Operations Center, which interfaced between Pierre Elliott Trudeau directly and the military during the crisis. Due to the crisis caused by this terrorist cell, martial law was imposed onto Quebec for the month of October in 1970, as the FLQ terrorists who kidnapped Deputy Premier Pierre Laporte refused to negotiate with authorities. In 1977, the Quebec government launched the Keeble Commission to investigate the evidence of the RCMP's role in controlling FLQ terror cells. This was followed by the federal Macdonald Commission, which unveiled more abuses by the Canadian intelligence community during its 4-year inquiry of 1977 until 1981.
So this impacted my life directly. Everybody likes to have a good laugh about this. My father was RCMP. And this all went down while we were overseas. We were, well, not overseas, we were in Washington, D.C., assigned there. And they forced a decision after this commission on all the RCMP officers of the foreign office. Had to decide if they were going to stay RCMP, in which case they'd be pulled back to Canada for desk jobs, or join CSIS and get to stay where they were at. And we had just moved into a new house in Washington, D.C. My father chose to go CSIS. And then they ended up purging all the English, the Anglais, the old Anglais, like my dad, the old veteran RCMP guys all got pushed out with golden handshakes. Dirty stuff, really weird stuff.
In its final report, published in 1981, the Macdonald Commission recommended removing national security matters from the RCMP's jurisdiction by creating a new, partially civilian spy agency. Trudeau's right-hand man and fellow Cité Libre writer, Michael Pitfield, oversaw the creation of this new agency dubbed the Canadian Security Intelligence Service, CSIS, in 1983,
Half French and Newfie. All right. Well, you got options, man. Should go down east. I heard land's really cheap. New Brunswick.
As a branch of the Privy Council office in order to continue psychological operations, but now under a new name. The origin of CSIS and parallels to the operation of NATO's secret armies, which carried out the murder of Prime Minister Aldo Moro in 1977, following the identical pattern as seen in the case of Quebec's Pierre Laporte, is jarring to say the least. The next time the Emergency Measures Act would be used in Canada was by another Trudeau Prime Minister on behalf of the Five Eyes over 50 years later. If anyone wishes to look through the voluminous RCMP CSIS files accumulated on Pierre Trudeau's strange connections with the FLQ, they would be out of luck.
Yeah, I was just talking with someone who seemed to be in the know and said, land's pretty good out east. Yeah, definitely take a look into it.
As historians were informed in 2019 that the entire Trudeau record archive was secretly destroyed by CSIS in 1989, simply because someone deemed they weren't interesting.
Oh, Canada. Oh, Canada.
Canadians and Americans have forgotten that the abuses of these Five Eyes intelligence agencies was already exposed over 45 years ago during the 1975 Church Committee hearings and 1976 House Select Committee on Assassinations. These hearings unveiled such secret CIA projects as MKUltra, Project Mockingbird, and COINTELPRO, the latter which was directly implicated in terrorizing anti-imperial movements such as those led by Martin Luther King Jr., Fred Hampton, and Malcolm X, under the pretext that these organizations were communist fronts. The reason why Canadians even have an organization called CSIS in the first place is because the terrorist deploying branch of the RCMP Special Operations Units were exposed over 40 years ago. But the idea that they are now clean, patriotic agencies is a myth. These agencies were created and operated by fascists throughout the Cold War and carried out atrocities, terrorism, and assassinations under the name of fighting communism in order to convince Western citizens that we had to give up our liberties to save our freedoms. It is clear that the threat of communism was used to silence those who were actual patriots of their countries and were leaders of democratic movements who were called communists, and this absurdly continues to this day, and we continue to buy into it. This is well documented and is a truth we need to acknowledge when looking into what these Five Eyes and NATO intelligence agencies have been consistently working towards for over 78 years. Although the Cold War is said to have ended in 1991, the techniques used by Operation Gladio to maintain constant terror in the population has continued with the war on Islamic terrorism. But now that Russia and China have decided to resist the unipolar agenda for global world government and depopulation, the old boogeyman of communist infiltration of our Western democracies has been unveiled once more. And almost like a magic spell, Western media consumers are falling back into their old Cold War profiles and forgetting about the real agencies that murdered the Kennedy brothers in 1963 and 1968. They are forgetting about the false flags that enmeshed us into a war in Vietnam and carried out bombings of World Trade Centers in 1993 and 2001. The question is now, if you have this knowledge, do you want to continue to drink Five Eyes Kool-Aid portraying Russia and China as your
Kool-Aid man
once again?
I gotta make a t-shirt out of that.
Or do you want to fight the real enemy that has infiltrated your government?
Voila! And many of their books you can get for free just by joining their Substack for free. MatthewEric.substack.org. We're gonna make QR codes for them. And Cynthia Chung, his wife. Fantastic people, fantastic historians. They should be teaching. Oh yeah, Chinese balloons, yeah. I don't drink that Kool-Aid, never did. Yeah, you know, I think probably most of us, if not all of us, were on some form of the Kool-Aid at some point before having awakening events. And yeah, definitely not drinking the Kool-Aid now. Just decaf coffee. All right, everyone. That's today's stream. We'll be back very, very soon. Nothing scheduled, but make sure you get your alerts on. Ding that bell on YouTube so you know when we're streaming. We'll take you out with our cover version of War Pigs, and we'll see you next time. Let's spread it.
We will continue to support Ukraine becoming a NATO member.
Generals gathered in their masses, just like witches in black masses. Evil minds that blood destruction, sorcerer of death's destruction. Oh, TRUDEAU!
We will stand up every day and every way in favor of the export that the Ukrainian government has asked for.
Today I'm announcing more military assistance.
No more war pigs have the power. And God has struck the hour. Day of judgment, God is calling. On the knees, the war pigs crawling, begging mercy for their sins. Satan laughing spreads his wings. Oh, TRUDEAU!
Our role right from the outset of the Ukraine war should have been that of a peacemaker.
We want you to be the super spreaders of truth.